I never thought it would end this way. It's Leader. Yes, it was a great newspaper when Grandfather ran it, but that was years ago. I didn't want to hurt Dad. But there comes a time in every man's life when he has to make up his mind, make a decision, even when he hurts those he loves the most. There is no other way. Strange how long it took me to come to this. I had to learn a lot these past 2 years. I remember when I first started to work on the paper, just out of college, sure of myself. The place hadn't changed much from my high school days. The same folks were there, the same smell of printer's ink and paste, the clatter of typewriters and the rumble of the presses downstairs, and Mac, the old city editor, chewing on the same old nickel cigar.
Hello, Mac.
Oh, hi. You coming to work?
Oh, come on, relax, Mac, and tell me how you've been.
No, I got a stomachache.
Same one?
What you need is a first-class man to help you out.
To do what?
Why, run this newspaper.
That's all we need. Newspaper. What's left of one.
Mac, I've heard you gripe about the paper for 10 years, but it still gets bigger and bigger.
Fred!
Hi, Dad.
Sit down, son. Sit down.
Thanks, Dad. Oh, boy, it's good to be home.
Well, Fred, do you want to start right in here? You know, you haven't had a vacation for a long time. Why don't you take one now?
Thanks. Can I take a rain check on that? I think Mac needs some help out there.
That's fine. You're on the payroll starting today, but you know Mac's a hard taskmaster, son.
Let's get this straight. I'm not asking for any favors or special treatment, and I don't want any. I'd like to start at the bottom and earn my pay.
That's the spirit. You know, you'll be the third generation of Vollmers to run this paper.
That's the problem, Dad. I've got some pretty big shoes to fill.
Well, don't you let that worry you. I felt the same way when I first started.
All right, Dad. It didn't take me long to get into the swing of things. Leave it to old Mac to see that I didn't miss a trick. He broke me in on obituaries, personals, and all the routine news gathering that goes with learning the newspaper business. He gave me the works. But I caught on fast, and a year later, I was covering the city hall and the courthouse. Then, the great day came. I got my first byline. Front page, too. A sensational murder case. I wrote it up from the viewpoint of the murdered man. How do you like the story, Mac?
We ran it, didn't we?
Looks good. By Fred Vollmer. Thanks for the byline, Dad.
Well, don't thank me, son. It was a good piece. You deserved it.
I wish you'd tell that to Mac. He's hard to impress.
Yes, I know that.
I could tell Dad was pleased. But the proudest man was Fred Vollmer. It wasn't long before I got more bylines. I developed a style that people liked. Yes, in less than 2 years after I started, I had my own column and finally my own office. Well, come on in, Mac. Well, how do you like it?
When are you going to hang your lace curtains?
Oh, now look, Mac. I worked hard for this. I earned it.
Sure. Keyhole columnist, recorder of trivia.
Now, wait a minute. It's time you and I had a talk. If you've got something to say, get it off your chest.
Okay, you ask for it. Slick writing of cheap gossip doesn't make a good newspaper. A newspaper has an obligation to make people think, to take a stand on things that count. That's the kind of newspaper your grandfather ran. It had a lot of courage. It had something to say, and it said it.
Now, listen, Mac, what do you think we're trying to do?
Listen to me. I learned the business from the old man, and he called his shots as he saw them. I remember when your good citizens of Franklin got all worked up about an editorial he wrote. And they walked in here demanding an immediate retraction. I can still see him getting up, walking over to that crowd, and giving them a speech that burnt their ears off. And there was no retraction. There was a man that ran a newspaper, not a sheet filled with a lot of prattle.
I didn't care very much for McPhee's harangue, and yet, Yet it was a challenge. I felt that if I wanted to, I could write something more serious.
Well, I don't get it, Fred. You were doing all right. What do you want to change for? People like your column the way it is.
Well, it's about time we took a stand on some things that count.
Look, son, when you get into things like this, you step on a lot of people's toes, and we can't afford to do that.
We have an obligation to make people think.
That's right. And I try to live up to it as much as I can, but I found it best to compromise on these things.
Grandfather didn't mind stepping on a lot of toes.
If he were alive today, he'd run this paper just as I'm running it. Don't you see? Times have changed. The world's become more complicated.
All right. Maybe you're right. Anyway, you're the boss. I didn't put up a fight. I really wasn't ready. Not then. Not even when I took a trip to Europe. My stories had pretty much the same style. I saw only the gayer side of life in Paris and only the lighter parts of the problems in Germany. Then I went to a little German town where the scars of war were still plainly visible. I wanted to see my grandfather's only brother, Uncle Johan.
Well, Fred, here we are. This is my living, dining, and bedroom.
It's nice.
It's chilly, isn't it? We don't have much coal these days. It's very expensive, too. Sit down, Fred. Make yourself as comfortable as you can.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how glad I am to see you again. I think today I put some more in. It's such a happy occasion for me, Frederick.
Mother and Dad send their love. They talk about you often.
Oh, yes, they always think of me. This tobacco has a wonderful aroma. I didn't hear from them for some time. Those war years were terribly long. Couldn't help thinking at that time when those big bombers roared over our heads and sent us some greetings. You may be up there in one of them.
No, Uncle, I was in the Pacific.
But I'm glad you came through alive and well. You look very much like my brother when he was your age. Oh, it's already late. I have a class. You know again?
Oh, really?
Yes. Occupation authorities called me back. I'm very happy.
Oh, that's wonderful, Uncle.
Yeah. Well, Frederick, make yourself at home. There are a few books left. I'll hurry back. Bye.
Bye. I spent a few days with the old man. Wonderful days they were. And then came our last evening together. I knew there was something on his mind. Finally, he came out with it.
Frederick, I know I won't see you again.
Oh, no, Uncle Johan.
So I want to tell you something. Maybe it's more an excuse or a plea for understanding. I mean, how all that came about. This war and this hatred and destruction.
But you had nothing to do with it.
Oh, yes. Frederick, I had. It was my fault, too, my fault. I and millions with me were just blind. There is no denying it, my son. I, too, believed in the promises they made to us. You know how it all started after the First World War? Remember, we had a wrecked economy, inflation, unemployment. Everybody was desperate. All sense of responsibility. We were confused, frightened, divided. We were no longer individuals. We became just a drifting mass, an easy prey for the Nazis. They blamed others for our troubles, and so we were taught to hate. They promised, and their promises fell on fertile ground. Who won't listen when you are promised security for yourself and your family? So it didn't seem so important then to sign a card of membership in the party in exchange for work, or to agree that your children had to be in the youth movement. Those seemed to us only little freedoms which we gave away. And for them, they gave us bread. Bread. Panem et circenses, so the Romans said. Gave them bread and circuses. So, step by step, the government took over control of everything for us. Our work and music, our theater, press, and radio, and finally, our thinking.
Well, couldn't you do something about it?
Those who might have done something could offer no leadership. It was like a dream that turns into a nightmare. And when I awoke, it was too late. I'll never forget that day of shame. Heinrich Heine, Mendelssohn, some of the finest expressions of man's thought were removed from schools and libraries and burned. Did you ever hear about the prayer children were supposed to say in the morning?
I read something about it, but I couldn't believe it.
Yes, Frederick, that was true. It began, fold your hands and bow your head to Adolf Hitler pray, for he gives us our daily bread, and all our wants he doth allay. Can you imagine? The Lord's Prayer twisted out of any real meaning. Little children had to pray to the state. That was where I finally revolted. I said, as long as I am principal of this school, we will pray only to God. I was immediately removed.
Was that when they forced you into hard labor?
Yeah, but it didn't matter. All the time, I prayed that someday I could tell those children the truth. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. There is where we have to start all over again.
So glad I came to see you, Uncle Johan.
Well, Frederick, when you go back, tell your father that I would love to see him, but there is so much for me to do here, so much.
I understand. Uncle Johan's words seemed to follow me as I came back to America. And somehow I knew that I would never forget what I saw and heard. Then I realized that something had happened to me. I began to look hard at the world I lived in as if I were seeing it for the first time. Back in Franklin, I noticed a lot of things I'd never paid any attention to before. There was that time in the drugstore.
Did you hear that radio broadcast last night? Guys like that ought to be muzzled.
Yeah, they ought to be a law, you know.
Step by step, the government took over control of everything for us. Our work and music, our theater, press, and radio, and finally, our thinking.
Then there was Bill Hurd. He runs a gas station down at the corner of 6th and Main Street.
How's business, Bill? I'm doing okay. I'll see you at the town hall meeting tonight, huh?
Not me. Too much talk. I'm going bowling.
Well, they say it's going to be pretty good. The candidates for mayor are going to tell us what they stand for.
Well, my one vote wouldn't count anyway. Why bother about it?
We lost all sense of responsibility.
It was the day I dropped into Joe's Diner for a quick lunch.
Now listen, none of you guys know the answer.
And neither do you.
Who says I don't?
Well, who does?
All right, you tell me.
Well, you listen to one big shot who tells you things are going to the dogs.
You listen to another who says everything's rosy.
Yeah, you think
Yeah, I know. Labor tells you one thing, the bosses tell you another. The farmer says this, the city folks say that, and the government says still another thing. And everywhere you go, somebody's got a plan. Just don't make sense, I tell you.
You know, when you hear people talk like that, it sort of scares you.
We were confused, frightened, divided. We were no longer individuals.
Yes, I saw right here in Franklin evidence of an atmosphere of apathy, ignorance, and confusion. An atmosphere in which disunity and fear could be cultivated. I had to do something about it. I had to write it down. And this time I really had something to say, and I said it. I didn't pull any punches. I called it The Price of Freedom.
Well, what are you going to do with it, Fred?
I want you to run it. How about it?
Fred, you're saying that in this day and age, we're in danger of losing our freedom. Is that right?
That's right.
Well, I don't know about that. I've got to think...
Yes. Think about the guys who want to muzzle everyone who doesn't agree with them. And the people right in this town who are ignorant and complacent. And those who are scared to death of what's going to happen to them. Don't you see, Dad? I want to fight against ignorance and selfishness and apathy. Fight for every man's God-given freedom while we still have a chance.
Oh, I think you're being too pessimistic. Things aren't that bad.
Oh, no? You know, people don't have to be conquered by an army to lose their freedom. It can slip away painlessly. It can be traded for pretty-sounding guarantees of a better life without working for it. That's what I said here, and that's why I want you to print it.
Well, maybe if you can rewrite it, just tone it down a little.
Tone it down? Tone it down? Some things can't be toned down. That's the trouble with the paper.
So you don't like the way I run the leader? Well, for 2 years you seemed satisfied enough. I never heard any complaints. What's the matter with you? Don't you understand that people don't like to hear themselves called lazy or frightened or indifferent? They get pretty sore. We can't afford to antagonize our readers.
We can't afford. We can't antagonize. We can't do this and we can't do that. Well, I'm fed up. If I stay any longer, I'll be afraid of my own shadow, like everybody else around here. And we call this the Franklin Leader. Huh,
Get out of here.
gladly. And I'll find some other paper that'll print this.
What's the matter?
I'm through.
These specifications on the new press are okay.
Mac. Mac, you've known me for a long time. You were here when I took over. You were with me through the years I spent in building this paper into what it is now. I've had problems. I've had to make decisions. Would you say I've been a coward?
We've both been cowards, and I should have spoken up long ago. There isn't much left of the old leader, but I'm proud of the boy now. He's a chip off the old block, and you ought to be proud of him, too.
I write these articles out of a deep conviction that each of us bears a real responsibility for the future of our country. For I have learned that other men's rights are as precious as my rights, that freedom is indivisible. I know now that man's fight for freedom is my fight, and this fight never ends. I have seen that fear breeds distrust and disunity. The security which we seek must come from within ourselves. I have seen hatred, false promises, misunderstanding, and thoughtless selfishness in our midst. I have learned it is the right of every man to make of his life what he will, and that in the exercise of that right, Worship of money or power or the state cannot substitute for God. For our country was built on the idea that God made the individual greater than any state. That is our way of thinking. That is our way of living. Come in. Up already?
I haven't been to bed.
I'm sorry, Dad.
I've been thinking of what you said. It's hard to be told that everything I've tried to do has been wrong. I didn't mean that, but if I had to be told this by someone, I'm glad it was by my son. But there's something more important here than my feelings. I read your articles again and looked for another paper to print them. Franklin leader.